All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our special presentation today, Conduit plus Engage, Maximizing Opportunities for Audience Engagement. My name is Gil Rogers. I'm the Executive Vice President for PlatformQ Education. We are the developers of the Conduit platform. I've been at PlatformQ for about 2 years, and I'm really excited about today's presentation because what we're going to talk about is the opportunity that we have to work with our friends at Capture to really support partners that we work with together to support all of your student outreach and student engagement opportunities. Before we get started, for those who are not familiar, PlatformQ Education has been around for about 15 years. Our priority has always been on developing online engagement strategies and supporting the execution of those strategies. So we develop webcasting, social media streaming, live chat tools, and support those with email and text message marketing, and really integrate those into overarching recruitment plans. So what we'll talk a little bit about today in a little while is how we go about doing that, and then of course how that can tie in with the work that your institution may be doing with Capture to support the analytics and the outcomes of those recruitment efforts. Before we dive in, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Scott from Capture to give a little bit of her background, a little bit of Capture's mission, and then we can hop into some of the research and some of the best practices that we're seeing. Amanda?
Thank you, Gil. I'm happy to be here with Gil today. One of my friends is Amanda Scott, director at Capture. And Capture I've been at for about 4.5 years. I used to sit on the other side of the desk in admissions and financial aid, and I make jokes that I made my way out of financial aid without getting arrested. So I'm happy to be on the admissions side to help bring students into your institution. Why I came to Capture is because of Capture's technology. We have a behavioral intelligence platform that allows institutions to use affinity and behavioral indexes to help them understand not only who is most likely to enroll in your institution, but who is taking actions that show institutional affinity so that you can understand how to best serve those students, understanding what is the solution to the problem of finding the right mission fit student for your institution. That is what we're trying to solve, is pairing the right students with the right institutions. We're going to talk a little bit more about the behavioral intelligence platform and the components of it and how that intertwines with Conduit, the PlatformQ's platform as well. But thank you for having me here today, and we're excited to talk to you about our work together.
Absolutely, Amanda. It's great to be working with you on this as well. I think we're really excited about the alignment here when it comes to, software platforms should talk to each other and work with each other, right? And so by being able to collaborate with the team at Capture to help improve the outcomes of our clients is a really exciting one. Before we hop into the content, one quick reminder for folks who are viewing today, you'll notice a chat tool off to the side. That's where we're going to be answering any questions that you might have, and we have members of our team there as well. If you have questions about specific features or programs or want to brainstorm with other attendees on strategies, let's go ahead and use that chat tool to post those ideas and questions and thoughts there. It's a great way to not only interact with us, but also a great way to interact with each other and start brainstorming on different things and things that you're seeing in the marketplace. So, one thing I want to kind of cover real quick is a little history lesson for all of us to just kind of reflect on. And most of us are probably familiar with this, but in the past 15, 20 years ago, there was a pretty straightforward process for building our class when it came to building that prospect pool, right? There were a limited number of providers in the space where everybody would go to, or not everybody, but most everybody would go to build the top of their funnel. They buy lists from testing services, survey services, and the results at the bottom of the funnel were somewhat predictive, right? We knew that if we needed to enroll X number of students, our typical yield rate is Y, so we would need to get Z number of admitted students and kind of backfill our funnel from there, right? And what we know and what we've seen over the past, 5 or 10 years or so, or in that process, is there's been a transition to proliferation of a number of different providers, resources, things like digital marketing, social media, the common application. And even when we have things like CRM systems to help us with automating and monitoring and reporting, we still see a number of things like summer melt, incomplete applicants not progressing through the funnel. And over the past 10 years or so, the number of applications that an institution has had to generate for one single enrollment has doubled, right? So what that means is that our staff is doing double the amount of work for the same net result. And that's something that's not sustainable, especially in today's environment with COVID and with the challenges of less travel and working remotely and having to multitask and manage things. It creates a little bit of a challenge when it comes to supporting students through that process and getting the most ROI out of the efforts that we've been working towards. So when we think ahead and we think about how we're going to create an environment where we may have, challenges in doing some of the things that we are traditionally familiar with doing and able to do, like travel and like, larger scale recruitment programs with larger lists and those sorts of things. How do we leverage real-time data and insights to maximize engagement on our website and also create a high-impact live engagement opportunity or opportunities for students to engage with our institution on a consistent basis? And how do we tie those things together? So kind of hand in hand with this is kind of a list of enrollment marketing challenges that are not necessarily new. They're just in a different light given the current environment. We over the past year or two have been asked to increase the volume of content that we produce. We need to increase the number of channels we're reaching students on: social media, our website, college help sites, all these different places that students might be connecting with our brand. But we're also limited by the fact that we have resource constraints, right? We're not getting bigger budgets. We're not in many cases, we're probably going to be anticipating a reduction in budget. We definitely aren't getting more time in our day. In fact, now that everybody's working at home, we probably even have less time in our day because we're managing the home front and the work front on the same time in many circumstances. Amanda, you and I were talking last week and the week before about this too. There's of course, challenges when we think about legacy tactics for summer and fall. I'd love for you to share kind of some of your thoughts with the tried and true practices and kind of what we need to be anticipating transitioning to.
Right. So my lens of fall travel brings me back to a big rollerboard suitcase full of view books. And I know that legacy fall tactics have evolved since then, but that is kind of burned into my memory as what counselors are doing during the fall is making those high school visits, going to college fairs. And even if schools are able to open up in the fall, which I really hope that they are in person, things like travel are still going to be prohibitive in terms of spending money in that way or socializing in that way. So we really should be thinking about right now, what should we be doing with any travel budget that is, what should we be doing to plan to get in front of students, because going to see them in person at their high school or especially in large high school fair fashion likely won't be the same. Even if it exists, it won't be in the same way. So looking at what should we do now to prepare for the fall, that's where Conduit Engage really work together to work on your digital experience, to understand how do you get in front of students when they're sitting at home. I know from having high school babysitters, let's just be honest here, that's what I have, and they are bored and they're at home, and you need to be able to get in front of them the only way that you can, which is mostly through online measures, text messaging, getting on their online presence, tracking where they're looking on your site, being able to email to them, being able to pick up the phone to call them, but knowing when to call them. So working on all your digital aspects are what Gil and I are really working towards to help institutions be able to shift their priorities in the fall, understand that, yes, you can still get in front of your students because they still want to come to college, and move those resources and time investments into other digital platforms.
So what I would encourage the group to do while you're watching the presentation is in the chat tool, share your favorite fall travel experience, because I feel like, Amanda, you're burned in your brain experience.
Yes.
is probably similar in some respects to what's going on today. I remember a year ago, I did a poll on Twitter about cafeteria visits, right? Lunchtime cafeteria visits and how valuable those are, right? And so the challenge with those is we do them because we're invited. We feel like we have to be everywhere. But the reality is that are those the best uses of our time, or is it better to focus on the students with demonstrated interest and identifying those programs? So even with travel, smaller programs like coffee shop visits, and those sorts of things where you have a one-to-one experience with interested students might be a better use of time. And you can use your data and analytics to identify some of those students, right? And so, throw in the chat, what's your favorite, what's your least favorite what's your favorite and least favorite fall travel experience? We'll talk about those and have a little bit of fun while we're going through. So, like Amanda mentioned, we're going to just do a quick brief overviews of Conduit and of Engage so that we all understand kind of how these things work together. And then we can talk about some of the outcomes that we've seen from some early adopter partners and the idea of aligning your online engagement plan with your behavioral intelligence programs, right? So first thing I'm going to walk through for folks who aren't familiar is Conduit. So on the Conduit side, when we talk about it, it's not just a software platform, but it's actually a software with managed services wrapped around it, very similar to Capture, right? So the first thing with that PlatformQ does is helps with the strategic consulting around developing an online engagement plan. Anybody can host a singular one-off webinar. Webinars are easy to launch. You can use a variety of platforms for those things, but it's really about how do we develop a plan that will support students consistently throughout the process. Then what PlatformQ provides, in addition to the software platform, is also managed marketing and production services around those things. So, on this webcast right now, we have Johnny on our team who's monitoring the production of our webcast, making sure that our lighting is good, making sure that our audio visual is sounding good, and then making any adjustments in the background, setting up our social media streams. These are all things that when you're left to do it yourself, there's some technical limitations, or maybe you have to involve IT, you have to involve marketing. These are things we were able to do really quickly with our April admitted student programs because it was kind of all hands on deck. But how do we develop a sustainable process to develop these plans long term? And having that production support helps. And then finally, all of that content lives on an institutionally branded environment, like you're watching it now with our chat tool off to the side. You're on a PlatformQ branded instance of the platform. Your institution would have their own platform that looks, feels, and acts like an EDU branded environment, right? What we know is when we align our digital engagement plans with strategic overall marketing plans, the intent and the goal is to lead to higher response and yield, right? So when we think about the key metrics that we look at for the process, we know that the key areas we're looking towards are increases in applications, increase in application completions, which is more important, and also increase in yield, right? So when we align the digital engagement plans that we work on with our partners with overarching recruitment plans, what we see is an increase in about 35% in app generation, more importantly, an increase in about 25% in app completion. And that's because what we do is we focus content on incomplete applicants, students who have started but not submitted their application, those sorts of things to help move students through that process. And then finally, an inquiry to enrollment yield of about an increase of about 10%, right? So by focusing on key strategies and priorities throughout the process and not just broad brush one-off webinars, that's how we're able to align to provide those better results throughout the process. Amanda, do you want to give us a quick overview of Capture and Engage?
Sure. So as I started at the beginning, the reason that Capture exists is to try to pair mission fit students with institutions where they will be able to stay for longevity. We all know that retention is a very hot topic we don't want to just have students enroll in institutions. We want them to stay in the institution. And we think that we can best be able to figure that out on the front end of the funnel through behavioral intelligence. Behavioral intelligence is telling you with those predictive and behavioral data sets who is most likely to apply and enroll at your institution, as well as student affinity. I think we've all heard of predictive modeling before, but student affinity is really where Capture is a differentiator in the behavioral intelligence field. Being able to understand when a student is engaging on your website, when they are ingesting the information that they're sending to you so that you can communicate back with them at the right time and understanding who is on your website, because they may not be a traditional search student that you acquired through a traditional list source. They may be an organic student. How do you harness them in? And that is through behavioral intelligence. If you want to progress on to the different components of our platform, Gil, we have 4 different components of the behavioral intelligence platform. I'm going to key in on one of them that's the most important, that does interface and integration with Conduit, and that is Engage. But the 4 different cornerstones of the behavioral intelligence platform are Engage, Aid, Apply, and Enroll. That is the student decision journey. You need to be able to engage a student through marketing automation. That is the cornerstone product of Capture. You also need to understand who is most likely to apply so you can influence them to apply. You need to understand how much aid is needed to optimize both the individual student and the overall aggregate of how much aid you have out there awarded to students. As a side note, my favorite was when the president used to call me into his office and ask me how much our unfunded aid is going to go down. That's always a fun game. Our aid tool allows you to understand, if you award an entire class a certain amount of money each, how much should you expect for your unfunded aid budget to be at the end of cycle. And then finally, Enroll. Enroll is looking at not only who is most likely to enroll, but how many people are most likely to enroll. So each of these fundamental aspects of the behavioral intelligence platform play together to individualize the student's experience so that the institution can reach out to them with the right message at the right time for your institution. So now let's dive into Engage in particular. Engage in particular is our marketing automation platform, the one that I saw when I came to interview with Capture all those years ago, where I thought, wow, I really want to work here. And it was because of that it was built for higher education. Our software on the entire behavioral intelligence platform is a managed service, meaning you don't just plug it in and try to do it yourself. There are teams of enrollment experts like myself and others that come from the field to be able to put together marketing automation campaigns to identify students on your website, as well as provide dynamic content that is specific to your institution and the objectives that you're trying to achieve. So think about digital ads that you would have like on a Google network or a Facebook social network. We can bring those to the website as well with Engage, being able to extend your outreach as they're on your website, where you know they're going when they're ready to apply and are interested in finding out more about your institution. So I can't wait to tell you how these two things plug together. So thank you for letting us have the opportunity to explain first the fundamentals of who Conduit and what Conduit and Engage are. And now Gil has a pretty exciting announcement.
Yeah. So as we've alluded to and mentioned towards the beginning and probably in the email you got about this webcast, we're excited about the opportunity for Conduit and Engage to work together, PlatformQ and Capture, supporting our overarching client base to out of the box and enable Conduit to be able to speak to Engage throughout a recruitment cycle. So and I'll walk through the nuts and bolts on how that occurs here in a minute. But I think generally the most exciting piece about this is that we have the opportunity now to extend where Capture is monitoring and looking at your student activity beyond just your website to any engagement that happens on the Conduit platform as well. Because any engaging with webcasting content, engaging with live chat content, which are the cornerstones of the Conduit platform, is digital engagement, right? And so that having the ability to incorporate those engagement opportunities into that student's record and into the analytics associated with that student is a great opportunity. So Amanda, do you want to give everyone kind of the cornerstone or the pillars of the 3 main ways of the why of how we got to where we are with our services working together?
Right. I think that we always have to start with why. Understanding why Engage and Conduit are beautiful together was what Gil and I have been working on from the very beginning. How can we help institutions enroll more students by using the two platforms together? And the three reasons that we have found from our immediate work together is that, number one, you can increase the identification rate on your pool of students by using Engage and Conduit together. Gil is going to show how we both use email marketing and other outreach technologies to try to boost attendance at online events hosted through the Conduit platform. But being able to link that in with the Engage platform allows you to know who those individuals are in your pool of search students or your pool of applicants or your pool of deposits, so that you can link that interaction to their entire web traffic that they have also on your website. Because we put code on websites to track them through Engage, we can put the exact same code. Gil showed me how you can do it in a heartbeat, and put it on the PlatformQ Conduit platform as well. So increasing those identified prospective students. Next is boosting virtual attendance. We're going to show you an example of where one of our mutual partners has used dynamic content to help increase attendance at their event, as well as having attribution. Attribution is knowing what happens to the student after they attend the event. That was the really fun part of our experiment, of our pilot together, was seeing what happens after they go to this online open house. Did they enroll? Did they apply to the institution? And those are the ways that our platforms talk to each other. And as they talk to each other, they can help the full enrollment cycle.
Absolutely. And this is exciting, right? So if we think about the past, right, and how these things have worked traditionally, in absence of a partnership, right, Conduit is sending out emails promoting webcasts, live chats. We're sending out personalized links to those programs. We're being accessed via desktop, mobile, etc. Engage is automating a lot of these communications based off of engagement on your website directly and helping to support conversion. And so, what Amanda's kind of gave us the overview of is what we're working toward with respect to having these systems talk to each other so that we're more aligned, right? So when you have a sequence of events that you have planned within Conduit, how can we incorporate that into some of your work on the Engage platform, and how can we get students from your identified pool to your events? And I think, Amanda, it would be fair to say that that's the best opportunity here is kind of closing that feedback loop, but also also providing a better student experience, right? So we're aligning the communications in a way where we're making this seamless process, so they're not getting conflicting calls to action or multiple calls to action. There's this opportunity for these things to talk to each other, like you said, right?
Right. Yes. Pulling the institutional branding and institutional message throughout the platforms is what I've seen is the most beautiful part. Like with Conduit having the institutional branding, it looks like an extension of the website of the institution that our content is helping go and promote and increase attendance at, and track what happens to them after the fact. So this says what we're working towards. I would say that we've actually already achieved this. Through our pilot, we have proven that our two platforms are able to do all of the three things that I already mentioned.
Yeah, so I'll talk about how this kind of works, and then I'd love to kind of show you some of those results, right? So, and if you're participating in the chat off to the side, what I would love to understand from you is, are you a Capture partner? Are you a PlatformQ partner? Are you one of the partners? Do you work with both of us, right? We already know this, but for the broader attendees of the session, would love to kind of understand. And what are your goals with respect to support? Is it more applications? Is it more? Is it boosting yield? I think it's probably going to be a combination of the two, right? But when we talk about kind of closing that feedback loop and what we're doing for our overlapping partners, is starting at the top here, we have we host on Conduit dedicated webcasts, dedicated chats. All of your pages on our platform out of the box, if you work with Capture already, have Engage code embedded on your Conduit pages, and we also incorporate Engage tracking code into emails. So when we're inviting students to your platform, we're coding them in that way as well. This then allows all that student activity to be automatically incorporated into your reporting on Engage, which then empowers your team to have real-time insights into meaningful activities, right? And I think as we go through more and more of these cycles, what we're going to see is that engaging with your online content is going to be a very highly predictive engagement on your platform, more than just casually browsing pages on a website. So before we hop in, Amanda, why don't you give us a little history lesson on some of our leading institutions, and we can give some examples?
Yeah, some of our leading institutions, Suffolk University, that Gil is going to talk about, Eckerd, Elmira. Each of these are institutions where both PlatformQ and Capture work together. So that means the technology is already in place for tracking of events, and the ability to promote content is already in place between the institutions. So we were very excited when we decided to be partners that we could already go ahead and benefit. Here's just a sampling of some partners that we're already able to go ahead and help today with our partnership. So Gil, why don't you show us how this works?
So yeah, how this works is that, everything on the left is Capture's dynamic content that's served up to students as they're browsing your website. This is an example from Suffolk, right? So what we see is an opportunity to say, if they have an RFI form, if they have a toaster ad that has dedicated content specifically for that student, here's an opportunity to now drive that student to engage with live video content. So not just, fill out another form or read another web page, but let's drive them to a financial aid presentation, or let's drive them to a virtual open house or a virtual information session. And so the opportunity here is, again, to align those marketing messaging and align the interaction so that we're providing a highly predictive engagement opportunity to that student via the software that serves up those engagement opportunities. And I was excited, and Amanda dug in. I would love for you to review some of the results for Suffolk based on our early findings.
Sure. So Suffolk had an event in November, and this data was pulled in April, and there were 40 attendees who came to the live event. Now, that may not sound like a lot of students, but let me tell you, there were a specific grouping of students who had not applied to the institution yet. So the entire reason for them to be on the webcast is to be able to interact and chat with counselors while they were attending, just like you can chat with Gil and I right now while we're presenting to you. They could chat to their counselors and ask questions about going to Suffolk, understanding who is Suffolk and why should I even go to school there? Why should I apply there? And since that event, 70% of those students went on to apply at the institution, and 53% of them have gone through, completed, submitted transcripts, and all of the application process, and 53% of them have been admitted by Suffolk. So I am excited to watch this case study because I know it's just going to continue to increase over time as we get closer towards fall enrollment. But this is one sampling of how we were able to influence these students and track what happened to them next. Gil can definitely attest that I was nerding out and sending him excited. Did you know that the student was asking questions and then they applied the next day?
Let's be honest, you nerd out on everything though, so it's kind of an expectation at this point. So
yeah, well, Excel is my love language and PowerPoint is Gil's love language, so it works well together.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah. But we had a fun time looking at it.
A match made in digital engagement heaven. Here we go. So,
oh, wow, we're corny.
so yeah.
Why don't you tell us a specific example? I sent Gil this example of a student. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we've anonymized this to protect the innocent, right? So Sarah from Boston, we're gonna assume it's Boston because it's Suffolk, right? But what's nice here is these are screen grabs from the Engage platform, and what you see are interactivity that Sarah has been having with Suffolk's content. And what's interesting when you look at this is you look at the timestamps of some of these when it comes to the timing of their inquiry and timing of their activity. And what you can see is that the Conduit event actually served as a catalyst to have this student start their application as well as complete and support and go through the application process. So this is a student who once they had the opportunity to sit through the Why Suffolk event, nearly immediately took action to get started, and then shortly thereafter finished the application process, right? So this is just one example of a key way that a counselor could leverage this data to understand the outcomes that they're looking for from a student engagement perspective. Conduit's going to incorporate this data into your CRM as well. CRM alone is just not going to do all of these things, right? So what's nice is we have an opportunity for Conduit and Engage to provide this level of insight immediately to your staff to be able to empower them to support their students throughout the process. So we're really excited. Let's keep the chat going. If you have any questions or thoughts that you want to share onto the side for Amanda or myself or any member of our team, yeah, we're gonna keep that going. But with that, we're gonna end the live webcast here. And just any kind of my closing thoughts on this, and then I'll have Amanda bring it home. Again, really excited about this opportunity to align our software services and our managed services together to support outcomes for our overlapping partners. I think as we move toward a world where virtual events and online engagement are a standard part of a recruitment process, we are going to having the ability for these services to connect to and talk to each other is going to be a really great way to find efficiencies in absence of the tried and true legacy tactics that we might have to be moving away from, at least in part, to see better results. So excited about this opportunity. And Amanda, I'll let you have the final words.
Gil, I think that you nailed the benediction, so I'm just going to start playing the organ and let us fade into the distance. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for including Capture in today's presentation. And like Gil said, we're happy to speak with anyone about how the two companies can benefit your enrollment needs.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.